We're doing a series on the chakra, balancement, ma'at, and the problem is nowadays ma'at being one of the top topics that the conscious community likes to talk about. There's one element that's left out of ma'at that nobody really addresses on a wide scale level, and that's the 7 Hermetic principles of Tahuti. Some might know it as the Kabbalion, which is what it's known in modern day times. The 7 principles of Tahuti are key in understanding not one just ma'at, because ma'at is a physical manifestation of the spiritual law, and the 7 principles of Tahuti deal more with the subjective realm, right? And dealing with spiritual magic / black magic, and this is what I do. Okay, black magic, we want to dispel the myth on that real quick. People hear the term black magic, they automatically think of Satanism, pentagrams, and devil worship. That's because your mind's been programmed systematically. They know automatically when a word and an image is registered in the brain, you automatically associate words and images with it. So when you hear those words, it automatically triggers certain thoughts and things that your mind has been exposed to. So this is why you automatically start gravitating towards those explanations. I'm not saying people in here. I'm just speaking on a wide scale level. So we have to dispel that myth. Black magic is manipulation of the subconscious mind, working with dark energy. Everything was formed out of chaos and darkness. You find this in all of our ancient cultures, even when you go back to Egypt. Everybody talks about Egypt, but the problem now we see with Egypt, it's become almost a modern day religion. Because we have a lot of people in the conscious community that have turned Egyptology into a new form of Christianity. That's not what it really is. We need to establish that these deities are archetype energies and they're a representation of consciousness and certain levels of creation. Because if you look at the higher pantheon, for an example, of the Egyptian Natiru, right? We know it's a Greek word. The word Natiru comes from the word nature. Each higher deity represents an aspect of nature. We know Geb is the earth. We know Tefnut is water, Ra is the sun, right? Then when you get into the dynasties and you start getting into the living incarnations of Usia or Osiris, and you work your way down into the pre-dynastic Egyptians on into the modern day Hyksos, we see that they were all representations or represented incarnations of these deities on earth. So we have to establish first and foremost, what is a deity? And this is going to also correlate to when we start getting into a little bit more information on the chakras, because you're going to find out most of these deities correspond with certain chakras, okay? And it's basically about activating the archetype energy of that deity, not worshiping it. Because what's happening now is I see a lot of people praying to Osiris. You understand? Praying to Ra. I hear terminology like Ra the Most High. And then on the flip note, people will say, well, I'm God. So now we have to establish in what definition of term. If you say, I hear a lot of brothers saying they're gods in various different conscious circles. I hear a lot of sisters saying they're goddesses. We have to establish from what perspective are we coming from. Because you can't say you're God and then you're externally worshiping things outside of yourself. That's a misconception. This is how religion began, and this is how they keep enforcing the spell of religion. Because the question you have to ask yourself is, if you're praying to something, and I use that word loosely, what is it you're praying to? And where is this thing that you're praying to? And if you believe in the monotheistic concept of God, you might struggle with a little bit about what we're going to get into. We have to get out of this concept that there's some God sitting in heaven controlling the strings of everything that we do. That's fictitious. That's religion, that's mythology. That's about as real as Santa Claus and the reindeer. So once we establish the misinformation and indoctrination that has been forced upon us, we can never break out of this illusionary spell, because we see what's going on in the country right now. If you look around us, there's a certain... People are trying to get into our psyche and feed off of our emotions right now. There's a lot of racial things going on in the news. There's a lot of police shootings. You got the Donald Trump shit. You got all these things where they're trying to incite your emotion. It's part of a distraction. It's part of the bigger plan that people are not looking at. Our answer isn't marching and protesting, because that's what they want you to do. They want you to go out on the streets and think about this right now. If we marched into downtown Miami right now and wanted to protest and riot, they'd be in with FEMA. They'd come with the National Guard. They got tanks, weapons, artillery. The question is, how do we overcome this problem? How do we attack it? And I keep saying, instead of having a 1 million man march in DC, which is structured and programmed by the government anyway, they'll let you have your little day in the sun. I don't know if y'all noted, when that last 1 million man gathering took place last October, less than 4 miles away, they had the military, the Coast Guard, the Army waiting and ready just in case. Now, my thing is, somebody should have said, why would we strategically put ourselves in a spot where we're there 1 million deep, where you're a wide open target, when 1 million of us should have gathered and done our ritualistic chants? We should have 1 million man drumming, because we did change the magnetic vibration of the planet. And there's nothing they could have done about it, because it would have been adverse to their energy. My point being is this: we're not attacking the problem spiritually, we're trying to attack it physically. And anybody knows every problem has its origin in spirit first before it does physically. If you go back to any great culture, you'll find out anytime we went into war, we reenacted a spiritual ritual the night before. This was always the principle. The problem is now we have people with different mindsets. We have amongst us, there's black Muslims, Nation of Islam, Sunnis, black Hebrew Israelites, we got Rastafarians. And these are all okay for personal belief systems. But when it comes for the bigger picture, the problem is we can't put our egos down and say, look, let's focus on the things we do agree on and not focus on the things we disagree on. Because bottom line is this: we will never agree on everything. Don't fool yourself. And this is not a mission about saving the world. And I can tell you this from experience. When I was in my 20s, I would go out into the streets. I'd be all over every borough of New York City warring with you, debating with you. I'd stay there for hours trying to get my point home. That's not what this is about. This is not a mission about saving people. You can't save nobody if you can't save yourself first. You got to get yourself in order. This is first and foremost about raising yourself up to the divine realization of who and what you are, and then everything else falls into place. But when you start going on a mission and you think this is about saving everybody, that's what they want us to do. Because automatically, if we get self together, everything else is going to fall into place. That's the reality. But they got us distracted with all of this. We're all over the place. And we're the only people. And when you look here in America, blacks, Latinos, and some of the Asians that are part of our family, we got everybody else's culture here in America but our own. If you go amongst people in America, and this is something that's always mystified me, and I'm not talking about us in here, because I'm sure all of us in here are conscious to a certain level. That's why we're here. Again, I'm speaking on a mainstream level. I mean, you look at people as a whole, they're everything. They're Jehovah's Witnesses, they're Pentecostals, they're Baptist. I mean, they're everything. It's confusion and chaos. Let me tell you a story that happened to me today. This is funny. I'm in the store today, and just to go to show you the sickness people got. I have a tattoo on my arm of the Eye of Horus. This one right here. All right? I'm walking past the counter, and it goes to show you when ego and arrogance comes in, you got to be careful, because sometimes you just don't know who you're talking to. You got to be careful. So I'm walking by, and the sister stops, and she goes, hey brother. Now I can see, I already sense the arrogance and the energy. So now I'm going to adjust myself and I'm going to play along with it. I'm going to string her along and let her hang herself. So she's like, do you know what that means? I said, no, why don't you educate and enlighten me on what it means? Well, do you know what it means? I said, well, why don't you? Because it can mean a multitude of things depending on what level of information you're studying. For an example, it means one thing to a Mason. It means one thing to somebody who studies the Egyptian mysteries. It means a different thing to an occultist. So before I answer your question, you define, because you already have a pre-answer in your head. That's why you stopped me. Now she's, humming Ralph Cram shit. So she tells me, and I've never heard no ignorant shit like this, well, that means beware of the white man. I said, really? I said, and where did you get that information from? That's what they say in Egypt. I said, that's what they say in Egypt? Who is they? Well, Egypt. I said, well, Egypt's a big place. Where did you read it? What text did you get it from? Where can you refer me to that I can go research that for myself? Because other than that, that's just your personal interpretation. And here was her answer after that. Well, that's what they're saying on the streets. I said, well, they've been saying for years that Jesus is a white man. Is that true too? They've been saying that all over the streets. It just goes to show you the ignorance that some people have because they speak out of their own interpretation. There's nowhere you can find in any Egyptian text that that's what that means. Anybody with common sense knows that. But the thing is, when you go out of your way to stop somebody, to try to drive home a point, at least have your shit together. You understand? It's ignorant concepts like this, and I can tell you where she got that from, because she's been watching YouTube videos, and I can tell you exactly what group she got it from. But rather than just recite and regurgitate information that you heard somewhere or that somebody told you, you should be able to create your own divine reality, not regurgitate somebody else's stuff. It don't mean you can't study up under teachers. That's not what I'm saying. It don't mean you can't read books. But like I said earlier, don't let the books guide you. You guide the books. Don't let none of these swamis and gurus, the days of the conscious pimp is over. Those days are over. If you're still following Farrakhan and Dr. York, and you think Dr. York's going to get you to heaven and risk and some spaceships are coming to get you, then you're easy. I can manipulate that. And that's the mindset that certain individuals look for, because they can control people that are weak-minded like that. Because the problem is, some people leave certain levels of consciousness and they go into others, and it just replaces the religion they left. Because what you'll find is most of these groups, there's the leader, there's the holy book, the laws and regulations, and then there's some salvation at the end of the road. That's religion. It's just masked with Egyptology, Africa, black Islam. That's all it is. But we're not looking at it like that. We're in a day and time where now consciousness has evolved. The planet has evolved. The day of the conscious pimp is over. There's everything here at your fingertips. We didn't have the internet 20 and 25 years ago. So somebody could stand up and give you a lecture with some rare information or some books that they had that you couldn't get access to. But now there's no excuse. You have access to anything you want to get your hands on. There's nothing nobody can tell you you can't find out yourself. Anything I'm talking about tonight, I'll give you my sources. You can look it up for yourself. I'm not telling you anything tonight that you can't find out for yourself. So we got to break that down to really understand, because people will constantly say, when do we go to the next level? When do we take it to the next level? When we give up everything that we've been taught that was wrong. See, we want to play conscious, but we still want to hold on to Islam. We want to play this, but we still want to access energies that have nothing to do with our DNA. It started first with the bloodline. We've abandoned that. Now we want to be everything except for what we were. You understand? That's what the concept of eternal life was back in Egypt. Connecting to your bloodline. That's what the Ankh represents. I've heard everything, the male, the female. I've heard all the different interpretations of it, and they are correct on the objective level. See, a true magician works with the subjective realm, or a scientist. The mundane deals with the objective realm. Okay? You got to learn to create your own reality, not let somebody create it for you. Anybody have any questions up until this point? Again, remember, you can raise your hand, ask questions if you have a question on anything we're talking about. Okay?
What do you mean working with the bloodline? Like, for instance, like I recently learned what my blood type actually.
And what is your blood type?
It's O negative.
Okay.
So, to me, that means the only thing that I knew from my lack of knowledge,
right,
is that my blood type, if anyone were to be hurt or something of that nature, I could actually replenish anyone.
Correct.
That's go ahead.
O negative and O positive. Correct. I'm O positive. You're O negative, but you can't take.
Right.
Correct. Well, I'm not just talking about that, but that is the oldest bloodline on the planet. You'll find out O positive, O blood in general, is the first blood type, which opens the doorway to something else now. If we're all God's children, why do we all have different blood types? And where did the different blood types come from?
So, yeah.
Okay, because religion will tell you that we're all equal, we're all God's children, God loves everybody. But when you retrace A negative, B positive, RH, which is the rhesus, when you retrace those bloodlines, you'll find these came way after. And the rhesus goes back to the evolution of the monkey, or the rhesus monkey, or the ape. Okay? That's part of what they call Darwin's theory. Didn't mean we all did not evolve from apes. That's fictition, that's fiction. That's not 100% accurate. We all didn't also come to America by way of slave ships, because some of us were already here.
Right.
Some of us are indigenous Americans. This is all going to connect to the bloodline question. So a lot of us automatically like to identify with the slavery thing.